So my YouTube video tonight is about Kathy Hilton's depression, and I decided to focus on Kathy Hilton's depression because it turns out that it's the main storyline of Paris in Love on the Peacock. It is surprisingly not her wedding to Carter Reum as we get further and further in to the show. And a lot of the Patreons wanted me to continue covering Paris in Love because they're seeing all these really interesting indicators in the show about Kathy Hilton, Paris Hilton, Nikki Hilton, even Kyle Richards and Kim Richards. So this video is going to discuss why Kathy Hilton is depressed, which has come out on the show. And also I want to talk about Carter Reum and Paris Hilton's relationship in a separate video because it is really, really strange. And so I am going to do a second video about that. But for this video, we're going to focus on Kathy Hilton being depressed. So basically what happened with Kathy was Kathy decided that she could never watch This Is Paris, about Paris Hilton's experiences in Provo at a bad girls' school. And Paris Hilton never forgave, really, at that time, her mom for sending her to that school and her being abducted out of her bed in the middle of the night and the mom just like watching and like having no reaction and not protecting her daughter. And in fact, causing her to be put in these horrific situations that she found herself in this school. So Kathy Hilton never said she was sorry to Paris Hilton for sending her to the school after she found out that, Paris was basically tortured by these people and thrown into solitary confinement. Things, which Paris describes, like being forced to get naked in front of people in really weird situations and just really controversial practices. And Kathy believed that it came out that Paris was going to die in New York. So Kathy really believed that Paris Hilton partying in the nightclub scene in New York and, going out in the middle of the night and being around all these club people was going to kill Paris eventually. It was like her deepest fear. And that's why she sent Paris to 4 different boarding school type places that all had sort of abusive practices in them. Provo, the one that's the central focus of the This Is Paris documentary, being the worst of them. Now, Paris Hilton, it comes out, she rebelled because Kathy Hilton was so controlling over Paris Hilton and strict. And so Paris Hilton wanted to break free from that controlling behavior that Kathy Hilton has. And Paris Hilton couldn't let go of the abuse that she experienced in the Provo school environment. And she was making it basically, what I got out of it was, it scared her so deeply that she was using her baby voice and she was not speaking her opinion, and she was just like a flake a lot to people because she didn't want to deal with like any kind of negativity. She just didn't have the bandwidth for it after being abused. So I guess Kathy Hilton's way was to sweep everything under the rug and hide the ugly in their family and only present a positive, upbeat, proper story to the world. And in the process of doing that, it became like the family's dirty little secret that Paris Hilton had been abused in this way and all that. And Kathy Hilton never actually accepted responsibility for sending her daughter to this horrible school with her husband, Rick. And so therefore, there was a lot of... So it also comes out in all this that Kathy Hilton's mom was volatile and emotional. And so Kathy Hilton didn't like that attribute about her mom, that Big Kathy, that's what Kathy Hilton's mom's name is, Big Kathy. And she used to run away from her mother's emotion and volatility, and she would go turn off and hide in another room. And she actually tried to balance her mom's over emotion, Kathy did, by becoming almost like Spock and basically having no emotion and becoming detached from emotion and everything being really flat. And when Paris Hilton was sent away from school, and even, she would lay in bed and she would either not cry and just stare at the ceiling like depressed, or she would cry. But she was disconnected. Like her emotions, Kathy Hilton's emotions seemed to not process things in a typical way. She just kind of like business as usual, keep up the front, keep going, So although Kathy is loved deeply by Nikki and Paris, I guess it comes to a head that out in the public now, because I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of people believe that this is Paris Hilton basically making a film to punish her mom. So even though, Paris Hilton's side of the story of making that documentary was that it was a documentary about her being a serious businesswoman, and then she bonded with the director on the show, and they had this really intimate heart-to-heart, and the director convinced her to tell the story of her abuse in these schools, and that became more important in the documentary as a whole. A lot of people didn't totally believe that. They thought that Paris Hilton was trying to tell her mom what she went through and get it out publicly. Now, once that documentary was out, Kathy Hilton had no choice but to own what happened to Paris Hilton in this school environment. And she therefore had to process it. And she chose to process it in Paris and love. So publicly she could share her side of the story. Now, at this point in the show, Kathy Hilton and Paris Hilton are about to watch the documentary together, which Kathy hasn't been able to stomach because Kathy Hilton doesn't like, upsetting things, which I think is really strange. Like, as a mom, you need to, if you did something to your kid, you need to face it, own it, and apologize for it if that's what's needed. But I guess that's not how it works in Paris Hilton's family. And Kathy controls, even when you're watching Paris in Love, they're giving her a great edit because Paris Hilton is one of the executive producers, obviously, and she wants her mom to come off good on the show. But you can tell that they're giving her a good edit, but they're also giving her a true edit. They're showing Kathy's controlling nature, and that, Kathy she's kind of a flatlined person. And I mean, to me, watching the show, it seemed like, Kathy must have had a rough time in her childhood, and she doesn't process things. It takes a lot to get Kathy upset, or maybe she just blocks things out. I don't know. But she definitely has that kind of way about her, monotone. Anyway, as I'm watching the show, I'm thinking, oh my God, Rick must be dying, because Rick hates, reality TV shows, wants nothing to do with it. Now he's got his whole family on every show known to man. I mean, he must be dying, right? We've got Kyle, Kim, Kathy, Paris, Nikki. Who's left not on TV at the moment? Rick's hiding in a corner somewhere. Mauricio. Rick's please get the cameras away from me. What's happening? I'm losing control. So, Paris Hilton obviously has dated some really bad guys. She admits on the show that she's been strangled and hit and all sorts of really bad things. I couldn't help but think to myself, has Kathy maybe turned a blind eye to not only the Provo school and the other bad schools, but also these abusive relationships? Paris Hilton does find her voice. She finds it in knowing that her experiences in the past that have been terrible don't define who she is today. They made her who she is today. And in that, she gets her voice, and she starts to have a stronger voice with her mother. And her mother, gets therapy and talks about how her growing up was really difficult on Kathy. And she developed some mechanisms, like defense mechanisms, to deal with her home life with Big Kathy. And some of those things may have evolved into like overly controlling or fear, or like a fear and love, kind of confusion. I thought it was interesting. Drew Barrymore was having a conversation with Paris Hilton, and she said that her parents also stole her away in the middle of the night and sent her to a similar school where she experienced abuse and stuff, but she actually got better because of it. That was kind of wild. Joe Francis was one of the things he connected with Paris Hilton was that he was stolen in the middle of the night and sent to like a Provo, Utah school as well, where he also experienced abuse. I'm just like, what's happening? I'm so glad that I wasn't from a rich family at this point. I'm like, so the bottom line is the overall impression is that Kathy Hilton was depressed when she had Paris sent to these schools. And she doesn't really get depressed, but she was. And that Kathy Hilton was even more depressed when she figured out what happened at these schools, and that she, in a way, was trying to protect her daughter, but instead put her daughter in horrific circumstances in harm's way, and actually scarred her daughter for life, basically, and she's getting through it now. So that is the reason, if you were wondering, sorry, my emails are going nuts, if you were wondering why Kathy Hilton was depressed and is depressed. And I don't know when she'll get over this depression. Now, I do have some tea about breaking code silence, which was Paris Hilton's. She was touting it on This Is Paris in the documentary as something she's supporting. So code silence is a punishment that these Provo schools used to put on children, where they won't let them talk, and they therefore socially isolate the children. I mean, I don't like, is this like these schools are like run by demons apparently. Right? Who's thinking of the psychology behind these schools? Actually, one of the best parts of Paris in Love was one of the psychiatrists that's hired by Kathy Hilton says the reason these schools appear to work is the children are so traumatized when they come home, their behavior seems to have changed, but in reality, they're suffering from severe trauma or PTSD from the situation. So they're not like, it's not a positive change. They've been scared or abused into submission. I mean, I don't know. Like, what is happening in our world? I keep saying it. Like, don't you guys know Love, kids? It just shows, like, doing good sometimes gets really complicated. So, yeah, they have a whole trademark battle starts to, present itself between some of the women involved in this charity. And one of the women is Catherine McNamara. And so Catherine is, like, saying that Paris Hilton is helping her fight for the trademark, and then there's like another girl that was involved with it way beforehand, and she's saying, no, I own the trademark and you can't bully me. And then Catherine is saying that, you're harassing me, and filed like a lawsuit on this. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, are we forgetting what we did breaking code silence for? It certainly wasn't for a trademark, because Paris Hilton promoted it on a documentary. It was to get the word out that survivors from this awful thing aren't alone. So, stop messing around in the litigation, right? Yeah, so, breaking code silence was a really positive thing from the standpoint of people being able to share their stories and, get awareness out there to prevent it from further people going through this, children. So let's hope that those girls, figure it out. Because if you look at the lawsuits, and I can see them all on, the court system, it's messy. It's really messy, and it's definitely not on point. And I can't imagine that Paris Hilton knows this is happening, because I cannot imagine that she would want, the cause's purpose to be pulled away from what it's supposed to be doing to worrying about who owns the trademark and who's like, the first breaking code silence founder. I mean, it's just, I can't imagine Paris would want to be associated with that. Now, as far as some other things, it's a tough crowd, let me tell you, because Paris Hilton has been trying to champion this in Congress, to get a law passed to protect kids. And she took some promotional pictures with like a few different senators and stuff. And a lot of people were coming for her because they were saying, don't you know that particular senator, was taking money, towards their campaigns from these types of schools. So in a way, you're kind of like helping the senator who was supporting this industry fundamentally in his state. And so I'm like, wow, like she needs almost a political consultant to help her navigate this cause, right? Don't take a picture with him because who funds him, and do take a picture with him because he's not involved with that. Very complex stuff. This is not a simple topic for sure. Now, let me read you something. So this is what Paris Hilton said for part of it to Congress. For 20 years, I couldn't sleep at night at memories of physical violence. The feelings of loneliness, the loss of peers rushed through my mind when I shut my eyes. This was not just insomnia, it was trauma. One night when I was 16 years old, I woke up to two large men entering my bedroom, asking me if I wanted to go the easy way or the hard way. Thinking I was being kidnapped, I screamed for my parents, and as I was being physically dragged out of my house, I saw them crying in the hallway. They didn't come to my rescue that night. This was my introduction to the troubled teen industry. My parents were promised that tough love would fix me and that sending me across the country was the only way. I was sent to 4 facilities over a 2-year period, and my experience at each one haunts me to this day. I was strangled, slapped across the face, watched in the shower by male staff, called vulgar names, forced to take medication without a diagnosis, not given a proper education, thrown into solitary confinement in a room covered and scratch marks and smeared in blood, and so much more. At Provo Canyon School in Utah, I was given clothes with a number on the tag. I was no longer me. I was only 127. I was forced to stay indoors for 11 months straight, no sunlight, no fresh air. These were considered privileges. Children were regularly hit, thrown into walls, and even sexually abused at Provo. I wish I could tell you that what I experienced and witnessed was unique or even rare, but sadly it's not. Every day in America, children in congregate care settings are being physically, emotionally, and sexually abused. Children are even dying at the hand of those responsible for their care. Just last year at Lakeside Academy in Michigan, 16-year-old Cornelius Frederick was restrained by 7 staff members and later died from suffocation. Why? Because he threw a sandwich in the cafeteria, and for this he died. The multi-billion-dollar troubled teen industry has been able to mislead parents, school districts, child welfare agencies, and juvenile justice systems for decades. The reason is a system-wide lack of transparency and accountability. It's clear that the state-by-state patchwork of limited, weak oversight and inconsistent licensing requirements is not working. Federal law and funding are desperately needed to bring real reform and true accountability to congregate care in America. I'm proud to stand here today with my fellow survivors and advocates, Senator Merkley, Congressman Canna, Congressman Schiff, and Chair DeLauro, to announce that the Accountability for Congregate Care Act will formally be introduced in both houses of Congress. The bill creates an urgently needed Bill of Rights to ensure that every child placed into congregate care facilities is provided safe and humane environment. This Bill of Rights provides protections that I wasn't afforded, like access to education, to the outdoors, freedom from abusive treatment, and even the basic right to speak and move freely. If I had these rights and I could have exercised them, I would have been saved from over 20 years of trauma and severe PTSD. Well, see, now hopefully Kathy can start to feel better. She's got it off her chest now. I'm sure she's going to watch the documentary, This is Paris, and Paris Hilton and Kathy Hilton can now become closer than ever. That they've now faced this horrible thing that they've gone through, and hopefully Paris Hilton will continue to get the word out and make a difference in this space that obviously has dramatically impacted her and other families. So, now my other video I'm doing is about their very strange relationship, because there is kind of a weird thing. All of this is great and noble and amazing, but there is a side to this new marriage relationship and sudden, every Hilton, Richard, being on TV that's a little commercialized, and some weird stuff with it. And I want to talk to you guys about it.